Good morning, Moscow. I believe you're having some problems today, Moscow. Good morning, everybody. Hello. Well, it's not really good morning for me here. It's a good evening, almost a good night. But it is morning in Moscow, and the whole picture has changed since yesterday. This time we were still talking about the submersible implosion of the Titan. Today we're talking about civil war in Russia. While Russia is campaigning a war against Ukraine. And talking about Ukraine, do you remember when the Russians blew up the dam and flooded the whole of the Kherson area? Well, it seems that the water is all dried up now and exposed a land bridge. The big huge reservoir, the big huge lake, gone. So it remains to be seen how Ukraine will exploit this opportunity. But back to Russia. I don't exactly know what's going on in Russia, so I'm going to turn to the BBC. Why the BBC? Well, it's not local news, so the BBC won't try and, twist it in some way. It's news from Russia and the world's changing, so I think the BBC will be on it as best they can. So the BBC. This is what the BBC has to say. All right. So an expert says that there's a serious challenge to Putin. My glasses are not doing very well. Excuse me. Well, I knock everything off. Everything. I gotta clean these guys, otherwise I won't be able to see where the screen is. And that would be disastrous. Okay, let me clean these my spectacles. And there we go. So, all right, let's get going here. What has Moscow woken up to? Well, I'm going to go back a little bit. Probably a couple of hours. And this is the serious challenge to Putin by an expert. Bernd de Boosman Jr. The upsurge of Russian infighting is being watched closely around the world, including by former U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense and CIA officer Mick Mulroy. He told the BBC Wagner boss He told the BBC Wagner boss Prigozhin was now presenting a serious challenge to President Putin. It says a lot that Russia had to rely on mercenaries to try and salvage its strategically disastrous invasion of Ukraine. It says even more that Prigozhin is now acknowledging that it was, in fact, unprovoked and that the Russian people were lied to from the beginning, he says. If Wagner forces can actually threaten Putin's control of the country, Russia may have to reorient its military strength toward a self-preservation and away from its efforts to stop the Ukrainian counteroffensive, he tells me. Even if this attempted coup fails, it emphatically makes the point that those closest to this war know it was a terrible mistake. Indeed, 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 indeed. All right, the next one. Actually, there we go. Okay, the next one says, you don't have to look at me, you can look at that. There you go. The next one says, avoid Rostov Center, says governor, as armed men seen. Things appear to be moving very fast in the city of Rostov-on-Don, where footage on local telegram channels appear to show armed forces surrounding a government building. The footage, which has not been verified by the BBC, shows armed men in uniform walking around the building's perimeter as armored vehicles surround it, including 2 tanks with their guns trained on it. Reuters news agency said it had verified the location as the police headquarters building. Meanwhile, the local governor, Vasily Golubev, urged residents to avoid the center of Rostov-on-Don. In connection with the current situation, I ask you to refrain from traveling to the city center and, if possible, not to leave your homes, he wrote on Telegram. Oops, getting the wrong way here. Next post we have is anti-terror message in Moscow by the mayor. Moscow's mayor has announced anti-terrorist measures are being taken to reinforce security in the capital city. Writing on Telegram, Sergei Sobyanin wrote, in connection with the incoming information, anti-terrorist measures are being taken in Moscow aimed at strengthening security measures. Additional control on the roads has been introduced. It is possible to limit the holding of public events. Please consider the measures taken with understanding. Okay, let's see what we got here. So now we're only about a half an hour away from... No, an hour and a half away from the latest post, which is coming. But let's just travel through this a bit. Anti-Kremlin tycoon urges Russians to back Wagner boss. Oh. Anti-Kremlin figure Mikhail Khodorkovsky has urged Russians to support Wagner chief Yevgeny Prigozhin, who, as we've been reporting, has vowed to bring down Moscow's military leadership. Khodorkovsky, who was once Russia's richest oligarch, said, "We need to help now, and then, if necessary, we will fight this one too." After falling out with Vladimir Putin, he spent 10 years in a Russian prison and recently called for tougher sanctions against the Russian president. Khodorkovsky said it was important to back even the devil if he decided to take on the Kremlin. And yes, this is just the beginning. Mikhail Khodorkovsky. So where's this Mikhail Khodorkovsky? Is he sitting in jail or where? I don't know. It doesn't say. Right, moving right along. Highway to Moscow closed, says the regional governor. The M4 highway has been closed at the border between Lipetsk and Voronezh regions, the Lipetsk governor says. Earlier, he said a Russian military convoy was on the highway. The M4 connects Moscow to southern regions including Rostov and its main city Rostov-on-Don, where armed men have been seen. It follows Wagner mercenary group boss Prigozhin's vow to topple Russia's military leadership. It's getting exciting. Next, why is Rostov-on-Don significant? The US think tank, the Institute of War, ISW, believes Yevgeny Prigozhin is aiming to force a leadership challenge within the Kremlin's defense ministry, but suggests he is unlikely to succeed because the Kremlin appears opposed to his action. However, any Wagner attempt to take control of Rostov-on-Don could have an impact on the war in Ukraine because Rostov is home to the Russian Southern Military District Command, which has been key to Russia's war efforts. The Southern Military District's 58th Combined Arms Army is currently decisively engaged in defensive operations against Ukrainian counteroffensives in southern Ukraine and the command center for the Russian Joint Group of Forces in Ukraine as a whole. It says. Okay, one moment. I had a bit of a spilling situation because there's the rest of that little post. And I believe the latest post is this one here. This is serious for Putin, ex-US ambassador Ukraine. Yevgeny Prigozhin's declared move against the Russian military leadership is almost certainly an attempted coup, the former US ambassador to Ukraine, Bill Taylor, has told the BBC. This is serious for Putin. The Russians are taking this very seriously, and it sounds like they should. But Taylor, who was in Ukraine last month, says the Wagner boss is unlikely to succeed. The Ministry of Defense Forces have the equipment, have the aircraft, have the tanks. They have the military equipment in numbers to put down Prigozhin's forces, he says. But the Russian infighting could potentially help Ukraine in its fight to defeat Russia's invasion, Taylor said. If the Russians are now worried about their chain of command, then the Russians that are supposed to be fighting the Ukrainians may be distracted and may even run. Hell yeah, they may even run. So that's, I believe, this is as far as we've gotten as to what's happening in Ukraine. But I'm sure something very, very sinister is going to come out of this. At least I hope so. Let me go see if there's anyone actually watching me and having. Hello, concurrent viewer number one. Again, this is unfolding as slowly as or as fast as the BBC can get it to us. I am, or should I say they are, YouTubers, bloggers in Russia, or who know about Russia blogging. And I want to actually try and get and see if we can bring in one of those. Why don't you hold on a minute, and I'll see if I can bring in some like up to the minute kind of stuff. Hang on a minute. Thank you very much. Well, actually, there are a couple channels that I can see if I can hook up with. I just don't want to hook up with anybody who's gonna strike me. Well, I'll tell you what, there's a couple there. Let's try these guys.
So Putin can save face.
I would say no, and to bring up another point,
The
to say no
enforcer.
to that on, because I actually addressed a question like that just a minute ago. They are jeopardized. They are going to devastate the Russian army in Ukraine to end this war. And why in the world would they end a war in such a bad standing like that? They're going to cut off the Russian army completely from supplies that's in Ukraine, and they are going to die there. So I think this may not be planned. This has got to be entirely unplanned, in my opinion. We may find out otherwise decades down the road, but right now I'm doubting that it was planned. And so I hope that addresses that fairly well. Thank you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Marion Deemer, also a longtime channel viewer who puts in a 20. And Marion says, last Friday, my daughter and I watched Swan Lake in Houston, and I never thought it would be Swan Lake for Russia tonight. And isn't that funny? I hope the Ukrainians are sitting back and watching the civil war. Slava Ukraini and Herom Slava.
And Slava Ukrainian. Thank you so much once again for the support. And it is pretty funny to hear that they will be watching Swan Lake a lot here in the here.
All right, that's one channel. And where's that other one? The second one gone. Oh, it dropped out. Hang on a moment. Let's carry on just listening to these guys, I guess.
In the future, because if y'all don't know, whenever a coup happened in the Soviet Union.
We have a little breaking news here from the live chat. Haven't been able to verify it yet, but see several people saying all of the military facilities in Rostov, including the military airfield, are now under Wagner control. This is from Prigozhin's official statement.
Wow.
The coup grows. Well, actually, the Civil War grows. Very interesting here, and I thank y'all for sharing that. We'll be trying to see if that's true later on. But as many of y'all know, we are very time pressed at this moment and are in a fight against time. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $20 super chat from the return of a channel legend, Trademarks and Patents by Thrash Law. And thank you so much for returning and also supporting the channel. And he says, Wagner doesn't need Moscow now. They only need to cut off Russian supplies into Ukraine, and Putin then risks losing Ukraine, and Wagner can cut deals with the West for supplies and amnesty, and Ukraine is freed, then Belarus, and then Russia.
And I thank you so much for the support, Trademarks and Patents. I actually think I said that earlier in the stream, and I would certainly agree with that completely. That seems to be a very viable plan for the Wagner to get what they want without having to go all the way to Moscow. But at the same time, it looks like they're going all the way to Moscow. So with that, thank you so much once again for support, Trademarks and Patents. I hope that addressed that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And we have a $20 donation from Sharon Flynn, who says, no question and no expectations, just kudos. And thank you for what all y'all...
Okay, that's enough of that. But this looks like it's the only thing that's on right now. But I'm going to just... I'm getting bored of just watching myself. Let's see what else we can find. What we were just watching is this one here. Civil war starts in in Russia. I know what we can do. How about we go and see from the Russian point of view? Why isn't that a bad idea? Can't see anything. Hold on a sec. How's that?
Their co-workers would say, what the heck did you do to us? Now, when people drive by the hospital, they don't say, oh, that's the hospital that saved my dad. That's the hospital that does wonderful science. No, they say, that's the hospital where the medical serial killer worked. Why did you have to do that? You ruined it for all of us. You ruined our reputation. Not thank you for getting rid of a murderer. That they've never heard, ever. All they heard was criticism from their coworkers. Why did you call the inspector general? Why did you bring the police in here? Why did you bring all this bad publicity to us?
Wow.
Wow.
Just incredible. Bruce, tell us where people can learn more about the work that you do and about your book.
So, look at the Russians have
the website
initiated.
Same as the name of the book, BehindTheMurderCurtain.com. It details all the stories of medical serial killers inside the VA that I personally investigated.
So these lower the lower chyrons, they are saying Russian Minister of Defense, Kiev forces exploiting Prigozhin provocation. So the Russians are actually admitting to it. That there's something happening within Russia itself, and they're complaining that Ukraine is exploiting that weakness. What a bunch of morons the Russians are. Oh yes, I know what we can do. Let's have some fun. I have some fun. I have some fun planned for us. But first, I just want to cut to the chat and see how we're doing. Wow, busy, busy, busy. Hi guys, hi everybody. I'm glad you're in talkative mood tonight. But let's go to this guy here. This is pretty funny. I think he's pretty funny. Almost there, guys. Almost there. Well, there I'm there, and there I'm not there, so almost there. Huh. Somehow that got messed up, didn't it? Please. This, folks, in case you didn't know, is a one-man show. So let's bring this guy in. Yeah, that's a little bit too low. How about there? Aesthetic. All right, so have you ever heard of Douglas McGregor? You're about to meet Douglas McGregor.
Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Friday, June 23rd, 2023. It's about 2:35 in the afternoon here on the East Coast of the United States. Colonel Douglas McGregor with us in a moment on who's winning.
Oh, by the way, regarding Douglas McGregor, I want to quickly play something that Douglas McGregor has play you this, courtesy of Douglas McGregor. Hold on, I gotta find it. Ah, I found it. Oops. Okay, now. This is what I wanted to play you. This is what I want to play you. There you go. The nonsensical Christian worldview of Colonel Douglas MacGregor.
The media is universally controlled by the same people who control your governments, control the financial markets, and entertainment. They are all part of the same class, and they are committed to this sort of Trotskyite vision of the world where there's perpetual revolutionary war to advance their aims. The truth of the matter is none of us share their aims. We're not interested in homogenizing the world and turning it into some sort of Sovietized entity. I mean, a lot of people talk about these leaders as fascists. I think that's very misleading. I think, in fact, you're talking about this Trotskyite mentality that says we're going to erase borders. We're going to destroy national identity. We're going to eliminate individual cultures. We're going to forcibly homogenize the world, create new people. The notion that, people are fungible. And this is all bound up with a very strong atheist creed.
What was that? A strong atheist creed? So this is what's what Russia's all about, what Russia, Ukraine, what the war's all about, what Russia is, why Russia must win. Atheist creed. See, this is why I think this guy is full of shit. Let him finish.
That there is nothing beyond this world, and therefore what we do is ultimately irrelevant if we do it in the name of what we say is good and moral. And that's defined by these globalist views.
That vaunted spring offensive, and Yevgeny Prigozhin's.
Guess what? I was muted, and I regret being muted, and I'm sorry. But I've unmuted, and whatever I was saying, don't worry about it.
You won't believe this latest explosion, accusing the Kremlin of lying as a pretext for war. Colonel MacGregor's opinions on all of that right after this. Colonel, always a pleasure, my dear friend. Thank you very much for joining us. What is the status of the so-called spring offensive now at the end of June?
Okay, so this, I'm assuming, let me see when this was recorded. I can only assume it was recorded today. Okay, it's recorded today, June the 23rd, 2023. I don't know, I guess the coup, the Prigozhin coup, had not begun. But things are not looking good for the Russians, as we know. But what does this guy say?
I think the kindest thing that can be said at this point is that the defensive phase, in a strategic sense, of Russian operations is coming to a close. Tragically, the Ukrainians have done virtually exactly what the Russians would have written for them, and hurled themselves against impregnable defenses that they cannot possibly win against.
never mind the fact that tens of thousands of Russians were killed on the front lines already in the last year. 200,000 dead Russians we have in the last year. That's not a sign of an army that is trying to successfully win a war. What am I trying to say, Sydney? But Douglas McGregor's a colonel.
They've never come to terms, and I don't think, for that matter, anyone in the West has come to terms with the importance of the links between intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, particularly persistent reconnaissance and firepower. And the Russians understand this probably better than anyone. They've used it very effectively, to the point where I know President Putin recently said that he thought that the Ukrainians had lost 13,000 killed. My sources say at least 15,000, with as many wounded.
So that's what they've got. That's kind of, I think they're just dilly-dallying around a little bit, to talk about the number of wounded and killed, and he's just building us up for the big onslaught of a million Russian troops around the corner, storming Ukraine.
So I think when the epitaph for the Ukrainian army is written, it will be written on the basis of this final phase from Bakhmut to counteroffensive.
So is it fair to say that the three defensive rings, which you characterized for us before today, that even the first one, the one closest to the Ukrainian troops, has not been breached by the Ukrainian troops, even reached, much less breached by them?
You're right, Judge. They've never reached the main defense.
So none of the Russian defensive lines have been breached. Now, that might be true, but for how long?
Defensive belt. They moved into the security zone on a couple of occasions, which of course is the area chosen by the Russians to annihilate the force in detail before it reaches the defense. So this is over. The question is, what is next?
You mentioned the Russian advantage in reconnaissance.
The question is, what is next? Well, how about a civil war, an internal coup, a special military operation inside Russia, by Russians, against Russians? So many things. We could, again, our imaginations could just go, wow. But the nice thing is that we've actually got the living history as it unfolds to watch and marvel at, or not.
Do not the Ukrainians have American reconnaissance to rely on?
I think they do. In fact, I know they do, but I don't think they have the level of precision fire connected in an automatic sense to overhead surveillance. In other words, the ability to see something that you want to strike, and within the space of a minute or two, annihilating that target. That kind of rapidity of response is something that's lacking on the Ukrainian side. I think it's lacking on the NATO side.
Well, it's a good thing that we have a backup system. It's called internal unrest in Moscow. Doug, we don't need no systems. We just need the Russians to be Russians, and they'll fight with themselves. Incredible.
Here's
especially when you consider who Prigozhin is and what he's done and how he got to where he is and what his past is like, and he's just a thug and a thief. He's been in jail. I think he spent 12 years in jail in his 50 few years.
Here's what the Department of Defense, they have a new spokesperson. Dr. Deborah Singh, I think her first name's Deborah, I might be wrong, made a statement yesterday, which is the usual cheery optimism, but anxious to hear your comments on it.
I think our assessments have been pretty clear from the beginning. I think, we know, as you continue to see the fight, that it continued to move to the east. It's become more of a grinding battle every day. You saw that in Bakhmut. The Ukrainians can speak to their operations and more to the day-to-day on what's happening on the ground, but we know this is going to be a hard fight. We know this is going to take time, and we are confident that the Ukrainians have what they need. They have the combat power. They have the ability to be successful in their counter-offensive operations. We see them launching both defensive and offensive operations right now, but I would let them speak to more of that.
You see, this really pisses me off. We've got a Pentagon spokesperson this is the Pentagon that won't send what's needed to Ukraine. F-16s, air fighters and what are they called? Like Super HIMARS or ATACMS or whatever the hell they're called. Stuff that actually exists that could make Ukraine's war effort a lot more successful, a lot more quickly. When during Lend-Lease in the Second World War between the United States and the United Kingdom, the Lend-Lease, were there limitations on what kind of weapons could be shipped to the United Kingdom in fear of upsetting the Germans, because we didn't want them to be we wouldn't want to poke them, we didn't want to annoy them by allowing the United Kingdom enough weapons to walk into Germany and just have them surrender unconditionally. Can you? I don't understand what's happening today. This is like a woke war, where the America says, "Okay, we'll send you weapons, but we won't send you all the weapons you need. We'll shortchange you a little bit." I do not understand why there is no outcry about this. Am I the only one in the world? Am I nuts? Don't answer.
Okay, it's Dr. Sabrina Singh. My apologies for getting her first name wrong. But does she know what she's talking about?
Judge, we increasingly utilize women as spokespersons. The reason for that is that,
oh my God!
Journalists and
you went straight to women. This guy's a cad.
Tough-minded individuals that may still reside in the media are unwilling to ask women hard questions. They don't want to embarrass the women. They don't want to come across as impolite. God forbid that they should be termed toxic masculine types. So that's part of the problem. Second thing is, this woman has a pedigree that goes all the way back to Hillary Clinton. She's been a Democratic operative for many years, which means that she can lie without compunction. And she did so very effectively here. This is not surprising in the least, and it's become standard fare inside the Beltway.
All right, Mr. Whatever the hell your name is. We've got a breaking post from the BBC. This one is 14 minutes old or 15 minutes old. I wasn't paying attention. Sorry, dear viewers. A video claiming to show Yevgeny Prigozhin inside Russia's southern military headquarters in Rostov-on-Don is circulating online. In the video, Prigozhin says his troops will blockade the city and move on to Moscow unless defense chiefs Sergei Shoigu and Valery Gerasimov come to meet them. The BBC has not been able to independently verify the footage, but we are looking into it and will bring you more when we have it. So it almost seems that these guys here are irrelevant. They are. They absolutely are relevant. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to leave them. I'm going to leave us with this, I think. Let's see if we can, let me see if I can get this done.
The media is universally controlled by the same people who control your governments, control the financial markets, and entertainment. They are all part of the same class, and they are committed to this sort of Trotskyite vision of the world where there's perpetual revolutionary war to advance their aims. This is the truth of the matter is none of us share their aims. We're not interested in homogenizing the world and turning it into some sort of Sovietized entity. I mean, a lot of people talk about these leaders as fascists. I think that's very misleading. I think, in fact, you're talking about this Trotskyite mentality that says we're going to erase borders, we're going to destroy national identity, we're going to eliminate individual cultures, we're going to forcibly homogenize the world, create new people. The notion that people are fungible. And this is all bound up with a very strong atheist creed, that there is nothing beyond this world, and therefore what we do is ultimately irrelevant if we do it in the name of what we say is good and moral. And that's defined by these globalist views.
Absolute nonsense. Absolute fucking nonsense. Man, I tell you, what's happening at the BBC? Nothing. Well, it also looks like there is no engagement even in the look, even the chat's just dead. No one around. Perhaps this is not a good time to watch a revolution. To watch a revolution unfold. In fact, we're not watching a revolution unfold because we are not watching RT. Let's see what RT's got to say. Because they are, they are Russia Today.
Zimbabwe brought upon feelings of both hope and despair for many of its citizens. Will this round bring up...
Okay, so who cares about what they're saying? But the, you can't, you can't, no, you can't see the bottom there. I'm going to just make a quick change. There, you should be able to see that. And now, when they say Kyiv is concentrating troops close to Artyomovsk is the Russian name they use for the city of Bakhmut. Artyomov. So, criminal case initiated against the Wagner chief. That's the Russian FSB, which is the secret service. Prigozhin is accused of organizing an armed rebellion, which he's in the middle of doing right now. And that's just looping. Ukraine's gonna attack Bakhmut. They're exploiting the Prigozhin provocation. So it looks like it's gonna get pretty juicy. And what most intrigues me is the fact that it's honestly it's early morning. It's not yet mid morning in Moscow, in Russia, or at least in the time zone that Moscow is in, and I think Rostov and Don is in the same time zone. So if So if Prigozhin captures Rostov-on-Don, now Rostov-on-Don is a university town, beautiful. That's where they have international conferences and whatnot, I think. But it's that type of a place. It's it's not I don't think it has. As far as I'm aware, it's got no military. Well, as far as I'm aware, I'm not aware of a lot of things. So let's not. I'm just babbling here. Nothing new coming in. I mean, listen, look at International Boxing Association. They're talking about on RT. Give me a fucking break. Well, folks. What's this? Yeah, it's all crap. All absolute crap. Carlos. Oh, we have some movement. Carlos Martinez Entity. Mr. T 2.0 wants an interview on his show now. Live! Alright. Mr. T 2.0. Is that somebody who actually exists? Mr. T 2.0? I don't know. I can't tell if you're trolling me or if you're being real serious. Well, I hope to. I hope my prophecy plays out. The prophecy that you'll see when I end this stream, which it looks like I'll be doing pretty soon, as the world is not quite yet awake to what's going on in Russia, and there's nothing we can do about it. So this is where I say it's time to end the stream. And out we go. Please stay tuned, because I'm going to, this is obviously nighttime for me, but tomorrow morning, Saturday morning, let's see what Good Morning Moscow Saturday has in store for us. Thanks for sticking around this long. Thanks for watching all the way through. See you tomorrow.